Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga video. And today it's finally time to talk about Set 4, Savior of Chaos. Now, there has been a lot of conversation around this set and the overall design. However, I wanted to break this out into a couple different videos. This first one, we're going to talk about my favorite cards from this set. However, they're going to follow a certain guideline of they cannot be the X-Rare or specific archetype focus that was supported, well, because of those X-Rares, right? So more of like, what are the other all-stars in the set that we can be excited about? And then, of course, I'll do a recap on here's, 4 or 5 new decks that have come out of this set because of the X-Rares in another video and talk about them at that time. And then the third video is going to be kind of a look back at year 1 of Battle Spirits and how our sets matched up against Digimon and One Piece and kind of do an overall comparison. Now, all that out of the way, I finally got the okay to say that I will be casting Worlds. That's why I haven't been able to talk about it a lot. So I am very excited for this weekend because Bandai Card Games Fest is looking to be an absolutely insane event with tons of people there, tons of special announcements, special guests, music performances, just everything going on. And as someone who's been covering a lot of card games over the 10 years almost that I've been doing this, it's nice to finally have a company that has all of them in one spot, one grand end of year celebration. So I am very excited to take part. Now that said, I have to tomorrow's my last day and then I leave very early Thursday. So I'm not sure how much more I'm going to be able to record and all that good stuff before I leave. But when I get back, it will be finally time to dive into it a little bit more detail. So quick recap. What are we talking about today? The cards of set 4 that I think are worth talking about that are not the X-Rare or tied to the X-Rare specific archetype. Think of these as the hidden gems because I know all the focus is going to be on the X-Rares, especially where we are in the reveal cycle at the time of the recording. We're seeing all these gorgeous SPRs. We're going to see the Evangelion cards soon. A lot of the focus, properly so, has been shifted to the X-Rares. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. And these are just going to be in color order because I was going through it with BSS04. So hey, bear with me. So first and foremost, we have Drought Dragon. This is one that is going to be primarily a staple for what we have in red because obviously it's a Star Dragon. It has a higher ascend cost, but ultimately this is going to be an extremely splashable card because of its when summoned. Select one of your opponent's spirits, hit 5,000 BP and destroy it. And then because of its first clause, as long as you're at 3 or fewer life, any deck can play this for just 3. Right, this is going to be a massive, massive improvement for sideboarding options, especially in the mid-range variant of decks, because as I was going through this set and kind of as I was looking back at the Ascend Spirits, which, spoiler, all of the Ascend Spirits and the Ascend Nexus, for the reasons I just talked about, are going to be not in this video, but this 5,000 removal is extremely important for disruption of hitting your opponent's Ascended fodder. So yes, I do think that Drought Dragon is going to be an MVP of this set, not only in red and giving you even more options of removal, but it will be a key sideboard card as well, or just main deck splashability, right? If we're going to be playing 1 to 2 of these anyways, just a 5k removal is absolutely huge, right? Remember when we went from 3k to 4k removal and how much more that hit? 5k, even better. Up next, we have Gray, the Servant of Siegworm. This is just Big Bang on a body. However, it is limited to the next red spirit you play with Ascend. So in a set with all Ascend or an Ascend focus, of course, this is meant to go with Ira, the X-Rare. So shocker, you will see this card in that deck list. However, it's worth noting that it, yes, is just Big Bang, but then it also has the ability to destroy some Nexuses. And also from an overall design standpoint in terms of what we can expect, not in set 5, because set 5 is technically the collab set, but whatever. So BSS05, right? So set 6, BSS05, you get the idea. That will likely have still a focus on Ascend. So this is a card that will likely see even more play looking forward to BSS05 and 06 because the way the game is being designed, it's very clear that they are going to slow the power creep and limit what we're getting. No Ascend, no Luminize. Remember we thought we were going to get Luminize in the first year? That's a throwback to people who've been around the channel since the very announcements of Battle Spirit Saga, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting Advent Luminize, whatever they're going to end up calling it, anytime soon. So we're going to have to really focus in on Ascend and how that's going to shape the next year of Battle Spirit Saga. Again, that said, because this is a, upgraded, it's a spirit, so it's a blocker, it still gets you that Big Bang energy effect that you need. Then, of course, just Nexus removal, providing to always be a good option in red. So, yes, very excited for that as well. Moving on to purple, and unfortunately, the only purple spirit that we are excited for when I was looking over the list. I had to do a double take, too. Dark Knight Percival. Now, to be fair, I think this card is absolutely insane. Just the fact that we finally get a revival effect. It does have to be a purple spirit, so this one is limited, where something like Reanimate is just a 5 cost, bring it back sort of thing. However, there are so many good options. Obviously, Lamrack is one that I left off here now that I'm thinking about it, but we all know Cavalier from the early sets of Battle Spirits, just being a good draw effect. Costume Artist, because you're going to want to be able to loop them back after you sacrificed it for its on attack. It does have Curse, take something with it. And then, of course, in a pinch, you can just bring back something like Beldegor, right, as a removal option. So I think just purely the flexibility of this card is really going to make it shine. The notable thing here is because it does cost a Soul Core, there is some overlap where you're not going to want it as much in Serpents, because Serpents are very Soul Core heavy. However, Shadows and Undead are not very Soul Core heavy, so that is a spot there as well. So that said, I did mention Undead, and again, going back to the X-Rare of the set, which we'll talk about at that time, we did finally get the Reanimate target. We finally got the key spirit for the Undead archetype. We finally got the, there's so much that's like, oh, we finally have this Undead archetype that is at least more fleshed out, that we saw going back to set 2. And it still is like missing a Nexus and missing a few pieces, but Dark Knight Percival kind of does get us there. The interesting part is that it is a Shadow type, where it really feels more Undead type for how that archetype plays out. So the family typing here is a bit interesting. I get that it's the Dark Knight and how that fits with all the knights that are in Shadow and all that good stuff, but I'm really curious to see how this is going to line up with the rest of the future sets, because again, this is one of those cards you just always have to keep an eye on as future sets come out and say, okay, what new 4 cost or less purple spirit did we get? Is it worth bringing back from the trash? If so, does Dark Knight Percival get some additional buff? So I really wish it had a 2K for 4, because that's come up so much for purple, but 3 for 6 is at least, serviceable, I guess. And it's bringing back a spirit, so you have to keep that in mind as well from its value perspective. Moving on to yellow. Yellow had a lot of exciting stuff, to be fair. So we have Hundun, the Fabled Beast, because Fabled Beast needs to keep getting amazing support, right? So when the spirit attacks or blocks, select one of your opponent's spirits. That spirit cannot attack or block during this turn. Insane, right? So it allows you for both offensive and defensive capabilities. It's a Fabled Beast, so it's going to be drawing you a card off of Paradise. And then, of course, the When Destroyed effect as well, allowing you just to get a Fabled Beast back as from its destruction. So there's a lot of recycling and a lot of draw engine that continues to happen in yellow. And I think at the time of recording, all the SPRs are done now, and this guy didn't get an SPR, which is insane to me, unless they're getting an Eva alt art, and that would be cool, I guess. But this is definitely one to keep on your radars, and one that is going to be frustrating a lot of people in the near future, I'm absolutely sure. Now, a little bit more exciting than just Fabled Beast getting more support is Luster getting a new archetype, like a new sub-theme within Luster, which is really interesting. So we have the Angel coming down for us with the 2-cost focus. This is a very interesting spin on the Luster package. We have seen a lot of times where it's just, hey, Michaela and the Shin at the top end, giving you that lots of recycling, and we have a new spell in green, which makes Shin even better because it's getting a BP boost and things of that nature. But this one really kind of shifts the focus. So again, when the spirit attacks, you may discard a spirit card that costs 2 to select a yellow magic card from your trash and return it to your hand. So really important to note that this Angel herself does not have Luster, but instead grants it to your 2-cost spirits. Now, again, we do have early things like the, early Penton that helps reduce stuff. We got a couple new 2-drops here that we're going to be talking about. Like, there was a decent amount of 2-cost support. However, we are still in a world where Exhaust Nexus is just the best yellow card in the entire set, even after set 4 spoilers, just for how much of an impact it ultimately has, or at least I should say at least Magic. So this does beg the question. We know that Fabled Beast is still going to be a MVP of set 4, and we know that they're going to continue to run Exhaust Nexus because it is an absolute banger of a card. So because you're getting that splash damage from the, already better yellow deck, I think this one does land itself in a very rough spot just in terms of competitive viability. That said, it is at least a new way to play yellow Luster, at least other cards to look forward to. So I am curious to, brew up with this a little bit and see where it goes. However, I got a gorgeous SPR, so Luster main still eating good at the end of the day. Now, okay, look, this is my I shouldn't have included him, but I did anyways. But Detective Penton, I love this little dude, and the little magic that he got as well is just so cute. It's adorable. I love him so much. But when destroyed, if this spirit has a soul core on it, select a yellow magic card from your trash and return it to your hand. Now, as I just mentioned, it's a 2-drop. It goes with the 2-drop we just talked about. A lot of the Luster decks don't really care about the soul core unless it's on Michaela, so you're pretty soul core free at that point. So you're easy to leave it on this guy. 2 cores for 3K is okay. Like, it's just fine, right? And it is something that allows us to buy back any of those yellow magics that we maybe had to use early defensively, again, like Exhaust Nexus or just dig for a spell otherwise. But it's one of those things that, from looking at yellow overall, it's just not what we needed. So I wanted to give this guy an honorable mention because look at that little coat. He's just the best little detective that we could ask for. But again, this comes back to how much of this 2-cost package is ultimately worth it, and will it see place in the new version of Luster that is playable? Ultimately, I don't think so, but at least I am looking forward to collecting another Penton. Now, an interesting one is the bird folk that continue to get support one way or another is the Glider Rider. So this is one that is a 3-cost, so it's easily splashable and allows you to either draw a card or ramp a core. It does mill 1 from your opponent, which I thought was a very weird effect. And I was like, oh, why wouldn't this just be blue? Imagine if this was a blue card. But it is worth noting that it is a bird folk, so it does help push us in the direction like we've seen from going all the way back to set 2. We have other bird folk. Now, it doesn't work as well with Harpy Nest because, at level 1, it's just a 1K, 2 for 2K, 3 for 3. So it has that 1, 2, 3 power up, which is not all that exciting when we think about BP comparison because Harpy Nest will reduce your opponent's blocking spirit to level 1. But it's kind of not much we can do there unless we get some other type of buff, right? So maybe we bring back Topaz Radiance. Maybe we're still using things like Angelic Pressure for BP swinging, things of that nature. But overall, I think this is one that is very interesting because you're always going to get something out of it, which is nice. But do I think this puts Bird Folk on the map now that we can at least fill out more of the deck with Bird Folk spirits? Probably not. We could need a little bit more support to get that Bird Folk family online, but at least we do have a interesting card here that is sure to find a home one way or another. Now moving on to white, and white got some insane stuff, right? Like I'm very curious to see how this format is going to line up because it's looking very spooky. So we have Red Eric up first, the android. So lots of androids and Ice Princess that you'll see does have armor white at level 2, which is super relevant. But crazy enough, while this spirit attacks, when it's blocked by one of your opponent's spirits at 7 or fewer, return that blocking spirit to the bottom of their deck. Yes, we are finally getting a ton more tuck effects in white. And everyone knows if you've played Magic or other card games, but when that gets spun to the bottom of the deck, it feels brutal. And this guy is commanding a 7 cost. Like, this is insane for like a mid-range tempo or a white mid-range bounce deck that wants to gain tempo by just bouncing card after card after card or threaten bouncing on block like Red Eric wants to be doing. So another card to absolutely watch out for, and I think is one that will shape a lot of the meta because it is a absolute powerhouse. Moving on from there with Viking Leaf. Again, when the spirit attacks, like one of your opponent's spirits, it costs 3 or fewer and return it to its hand. So we now have Valkyrie Mist at 4. We have Viking Leaf at 4. And we are just saying, hey, you are not allowed to keep spirits on the board. And also the Android typing is going to be relevant for the other video that we're going to talk about. But I do think that even outside of the typing and outside of the Android archetype and kind of where that all lands, I think this is just something to look out for because of the impact it's going to have. And there's still a lot of great 3-cost spirits that we want to be playing and we want to be able to stick on the board. And this guy just says, nope, sorry, it's going back to your hand. Now, yes, the BP thresholds are going to be a bit lower across the androids and the Valkyries that we're going to be talking about, but it is something that still commands it like, hey, if you don't have a Burning Force or a Ritual Fire in the Burst or something of that nature, right, we are going to get this attack through and we're going to get at least another attack because we remove that blocker. So very scary, very much looking forward to seeing where this lands. And then the one I thought that was really exciting was Valkyrie Callista, which also just got an SPR announced today, which is absolutely gorgeous. This one is just silly, right? So we have the Valkyrie archetype, right? So now it's Valkyrie, which is some ice princesses. It's also some of the androids that we talked about, but all your spirits with Valkyrie in their card name, so I put a couple of them up there just for a quick visual reminder, gain armor red, white, and blue. Those are 3 very good armors, right? Especially the BP removal can't be bounced. Wild. And then on top of that, during your attack step, this spirit and your spirits with a soul core on cannot be blocked by your spirit's color specified in the armor effects they possess. So yes, it is going to be limited to the soul core, but it is effectively saying, hey, one of these is going to be unblockable and it's going to have the armor against effectively half the field, right? So having both of those just built in and stapled into a card, while we might not have enough Valkyrie mist or Valkyries to really care about it just yet, we'll have to see like where the rest of the deck gets formed up. This is still a very scary effect for future card design and for future Valkyries specifically that we get. Now, the other part I did want to mention here is because I'm breaking my own rule just a little bit, just because I wanted to like show how this is all coming together, because it's technically not an X-Rare, but it like got its own sub-theme that we did get Permafrost Palace. It does have a relevant level 2 that when one of them are destroyed, you get to bounce something else instead. So it's really cool that we finally got a little bit of a family support that also got the Nexus that it wanted, because all of these Valkyrie and androids that we have been talking about have lower BP. So not only are they going to bounce something either on play or on attack, they then say, hey, if you block this, you're going to lose something else. So this is a very scary archetype that's coming online in Battle Spirit's 4th set that I'm very curious to see where it goes from here. So I've already picked up my Judge Foil Hilders. Maybe go pick those up as well if they are still cheap. Moving on to green, I had to give this guy a shout out. If you know, you know. We got that Mach G coming for us. And it's just a 1-cost Swift that we can get flash into play. And again, sometimes you just want a surprise blocker. Sometimes you just want a surprise attacker, especially in a world where we've seen the red and blue X-Rares or just some of the other X-Rares in general that say, hey, I'm going to do this very strong on attack thing, either clear your board or on summon or destroy your biggest guy, right? Sometimes you just need something you can flash in and block with that won't get affected by those strong on summon effects. So I do think there is a world where we're going to see more of this Prey Bird family come online, and this is just the 1 cost that we needed to kind of save everything, right? So we'll see where this fits in the bigger picture, but something I am still very excited for. Now, Hidden Leaf Elf Leaf Kindred. I love this, and I do again have to give a special shout out to the Nexus that it got that allows us to cheat Swift at the end of our opponent's turn, even if they didn't attack. So one of the issues for a lot of people who haven't played like this Swift focus with like Airborne Crag and that whole line, like Armor Tree, right? All that stuff. One of the biggest issues we always had is that if your opponent wanted to play around it, they just would not attack, right? If your opponent does not go into the attack step, you as the Swift player does not get a flash step to bring stuff in. And it was extremely punishing. Like, as long as your opponent was a good player, Swift was in theory always bad, because you have to telegraph it. You have to give up that information of saying like, hey, I have an answer sort of thing. And your opponent could just go, okay, well, I don't want to risk the attack. Here it goes. But Force of the Sacred Conifer allows us to now cheat stuff into play at your opponent's end step, which is really important because then they can't react to it either. This is just a, hey, I'm going to do something and put this into play. The level 2, whatever, right? But with Hidden Leaf Kindred, she has this when summoned that you get to put a Leaf Kindred or Prey Bird spirit from your hand into play. So this is really exciting because it opens up the opportunity of what other Leaf Kindreds will we get, what other Prey Bird on summon effects will we see, or sometimes you just want to be able to cheat going into your X-Rare because you've already set up that the Green Ascend Spirit fodder the turn before and your opponent didn't want to give you a Swift window. Well, now you can do it. Now you can bring in the Tokuwa, top down your opponent's board, and really get to untap and cause some chaos. So again, this does lean more into the Swift archetype. Yes, it does have that Prey Bird subtyping, which is extremely relevant as well, but I am very excited to see where this card lines up for itself within the next, couple of sets. Leaf Kindred is a bit limited right now, to be fair, as well as Prey Bird, but this is a very, very strong effect when combined with the Nexus that we got. Now, again, I have to break my own rule just a little bit. Because yes, this is technically the X-Rare focus that we talked about that we said we wouldn't do. But look, Swallow is just insane for giving us finally a early game blocker or an early game spirit that does not always rely on attacking, right? One of the main issues with set 3 blue is that your defensive options were just awful, and a lot of times you just had to attack. You had to get to 10 cards in your opponent's graveyard so that you could turn on things like Allegro, right? And the other side of that was we had no core ramping and we had no core draw. Well, Great Sapphire Labyrinth does at least fix half of that issue with now giving us ramp. And of course, with Squallow, it does have that restriction of you need to have a Nexus. But really importantly, it is a 5K blocker for a single core. This is huge for all defensive themes of blue. And as we're going to talk about in the next card, we just really needed something early that we could play, stick on the board, doesn't die to red base removal, right? It's 5K. It's not 4K anymore. It still dies to the big dragon we talked about, but at least it is giving us something to control the early game while also ramping its core. So, these two cards alone fixed half of blue's problem in set 4, which is really, really exciting to see. And again, I think Gladiator Squallow is one of those cards that we're just going to continue to see going into set 5, going into set 6, because it is just that early game blocker and board establisher that blue so desperately needed. Now, probably the most exciting thing that we've got, and again, one that I'm just absolutely devastated that we didn't get an SPR for, is Spike Knuckle Roger. This guy is going to come in and just mill you on the spot. I know mill is a sensitive topic, and I know a lot of people don't want to get milled out, but yeah, this is great. 4 Rogers, 4 Mandalas, let's go, right? Like, we have enough of a mill where as long as we can cycle with strong draw, we are going to mill our opponent out. And what's really important about this is just thinking about blue from an overall design standpoint and from an overall, how much do we really care about the filtering, right? Like, what are we really digging for at the end of the day? And now, thanks to strong draw, we are now in a spot where we can line up these hands with Roger, with Mandala, and really start to curate those. Hey, we are going to mill out over X turns. We want strong draw to dig us one card deeper just so we can find that extra Roger or that extra Mandala that we need to win the game. Yes, it is balanced in the sense that it does require a soul core, so you can't just fire all these off in a turn, right? It is something that you're going to do turn after turn after turn, but it is also held back by the fact that it is 4 cores for a 7K, so the blocking leaves a little bit to be desired. So we'll have to see how that works out, but yes, the mill deck is very alive for the next set, and to be fair, it didn't need much, so, I'm glad to see that they didn't, over push mill in this regard. I think Roger is the perfect balance of it. Moving on from there, we're going to get into a couple of the magics now with Double Deadly and Cursed Enchantment. So, 2 very strong cards out of purple that I'm excited for. Double Deadly, super balanced that you can't do it in main. It would have been absolutely insane if you could just get around, Beldegor and making sure your opponent doesn't have a reaction to it. So I love this, that it is balanced by the flash. I love the idea of getting to sacrifice our own guys to the Rotting Swamp. We then get to draw a card, remove 2 of your guys' threats. Lovely card. But then Curse, I think as I was going through and prepping for this video and going over the magics again and thinking about overall, I think the Curse is probably going to be my favorite thing because it's something that is just super low cost, right? It's 2. It is going to eat a card out of your hand, which is, a threatening that we've seen with Godslayer, right? But the fact that you're giving Curse, I think is just super exciting because it also lines up, off color, obviously very exciting. It's a 2 cost. It can go in the 2 cost deck technically for a yellow because a lot of times you just care about cards that cost 2, not necessarily yellow cards that cost 2. But then also there's the surprise of hey, you have a Maduke on board. Here's a surprise Curse spirit that now has Blood Curse, and oh, I got you, right? So there's just so many unique things that you can do with the Curse magic that I think is going to be really awesome to see play out within this next set. Moving on from there with yellow, and there's the other yellow magic that I had to give a shout out, Key of Intrusion. Super MVP. I think this is definitely one of the ones. I love the design space. If you use it as a main effect, if you just need to go digging for that angel card, it's only going to cost 4. So with a cost of 4, very easy to use in the early game. Find those angels you need. Awesome. And then Flash, select one of your opponent's spirits, reduce its BP by 8,000, right? When we think about Flagellum, that is a 10K nuke in a single card. And with respect to the double spirits or the double symbol spirits that we're going to be getting, a 10K nuke is very welcomed in this regard. Then Rhetorical Reversal. I love the artwork. This is another one where as I was going through the set, as I was trying to find the different BP thresholds, figuring out what is going to be important for removing the Ascend Spirit fodder, this came up time and time again because it is a 5K hit. However, you do need to lose a life for the effect, so it's not nearly as good as all the other options that we've talked about, but I think if we find ourselves in a spot where 5K removal and getting rid of those Ascend Spirits is very, very important, then you will probably be relying on this card just to get that early removal as needed and kind of reset the tempo of the game. So Definitely not exciting at first glance, but I think for how it's going to line up with the Ascend Spirits, Rhetoric Reversal is going to be a little bit better of a buy-in. Now, for some of the other colors, wasn't nearly as exciting for the magics that we got. White, I want to give a shout out to Blizzard Wall because it is just a free Dream Vom for 1 symbol spirits out of your burst. And then also just the flash effect, being able to shut off aggro for a turn. Yes, they are 4 costs or less, but as we talked about for that Android Ice Princess style of deck that's going to be coming out, it might just be a good sideboard card for stabilizing for that reason, especially for white control decks to have that option. So there's a couple others that were pretty close to be noticeable and to be noteworthy on white, but for me at least it is just Blizzard Walled. And I gotta be honest, with green, I just had nothing. Green for the Magics really hurt, but I dug and I dug and I dug and I'm like, all right, you know what? Absorb Power. Let's give it a shout out to Absorb Power, because now with Michaela plus this card, it is now a 1, and obviously any Illustrious Spirit, it is now a proper 1 card OTK, right? With Shin, you're able to give it a very significant BP boost. It's going to allow you to continue to untap in it. So as long as you have an answer for like whatever that first big beefy blocker is that your opponent's going to have, Absorb Power is just going to kill them on the spot. Now, of course, there's a ton of removal. There's a ton of options that we've had or counterplays we've talked about to this, or just like a simple Ice Shield and get to live another turn. But it's a one of, like, have fun with it. Maybe you get off the Shin OTK, maybe you don't, right? And then for blue, again, blue, I really would have loved to see more excitement out of the Magics, but Raging Tide, look, MVP sideboard card, I get it. It hits your own stuff, which is why I'm not as excited about it, but the fact that it's flash and all that good stuff, super cool. Sideboard card, great. Have at it, right? But I do love that we have additional ways to keep aggro in check. Then the other one was Call of the Deep, which again, as I was going back through it and just like really digging for answers of like, look, we have Floodstream, so Floodstream is always going to be that 4 of that you run before you run this. But again, thinking back to what are the Ascended Spirits looking like, how important it is to remove them, that I think this is going to be a very relevant sideboard card, because you just have flat destruction against all of your opponent's Ascended targets, so that if they go into combat and they're trying to get that chip damage in, you then immediately could have the punish of Floodstream or Call of the Deep and saying, hey, nope, you're not bringing out that double symbol spirit next turn. You got to wait. And just giving more removal options for blue, I think, is always welcome. I will say again, for that note, the difference between 3 costs and 4 costs is pretty huge in terms of what we want to target. So Call of the Deep does get that honorable mention here for, look, maybe not being the most exciting card of the Magics that we've got, but it does allow us for some more removal for the Ascend Spirits, which I think is going to be the cornerstone of focus for set 4. So with that, that is our top picks. Again, the non-archetype driven ones with a few exceptions mixed in for set 4, Savior of Chaos. What color are you looking forward to playing the most in this new set? Of course, myself being a blue main, we got the Hydra, which is absolutely insane. But when I was trying to put the list together, BSSDB wasn't updated just yet. And as I mentioned, I will be traveling this weekend for Worlds. So we might not get a chance to record that video before we leave. If I can, I will. But otherwise, probably after Worlds and all the other huge announcements that we're getting this weekend, I will definitely be doing a recap of Battle Spirits news, and I am very excited to talk about it some more. So with that, my friends, I hope you have a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay hydrated. If you're in LA this weekend, don't be shy, say hi. But otherwise, I will look forward to more Battle Spirits Saga news, content, and all that good stuff right after Worlds. So until then, stay safe, stay hydrated, and see you in the next one. Cheers.